virtual learning libraries on both the BA website and AAGO websites, and they'll be up there for a long time. If you want to have access to those things, what you'll need to do is you'll need to be a member of either AAGO's APASS or BA's BAPASS education subscription programs, and that'll give you unlimited access to all the webinars that we have in our virtual learning library from now and henceforward till the end of time. So quick bit of housekeeping before we get started. Just a quick reminder to you that the Apartment Association of Greater Orlando, the Bay Area Apartment Associations, do not give legal or operational advice. What you're going to be hearing today in this webinar are resources for you to be able to use, but we always want you to consult with your company and with the people at your corporate office, as well as your attorney, before making any decisions on ways that you'll handle any type of issue. Just a quick reminder of all that good stuff. Now with that, let's take a look at the results for our poll. Let's take a peek here. Let's see. Most people think that the answer came from Ponce de Leon, and you're correct. He called it La Florida, which means land of flowers. That's where that came from. And it was not from Carol Baskin. I'm sorry, but she did kill her husband, and we all agree with that. We all agree. Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, let's get started. Let's get started here today. We're very happy to have you all here. Let's take a peek. Clean versus disinfecting. Do you know the difference? We've assembled a pretty great group of panelists today who represent a lot of different types of the people within our industry that are going to help do that. So, but before we get started, I want to thank our friends from Chadwell Supply, and you're going to meet the CoKen folks here in just a minute. But Chadwell Supply stepped up to sponsor this, and Chadwell Supply is also a Lighthouse sponsor, and their logo is over my shoulder over there on the Lighthouse sponsor banner. And we appreciate that. And they're also a big contributor to what all the things that the Apartment Association of Greater Orlando does. So thank you, Chadwell. We love you guys. And I know that Mike and Angela are going to talk a little bit about Chadwell here in just a moment. Before we dive in, I want to introduce you to today's panelists, and then we'll get started. So I don't know where they are on your screen, but on my screen, the person at the very top and on those little cameras there is Chris Lincoln. So Chris Lincoln, hi there, Chris. Chris is Regional Maintenance Director for Greystar, and Chris has a background in skilled trades with over 12 years in multifamily maintenance, and currently he's the Regional Maintenance Manager with Greystar, supporting the Greystar-owned assets on the East Coast. I was fortunate enough to work with Chris for a while back when I was with the Atlanta and Georgia Apartment Association. We've known each other for a number of years, and we appreciate you being here with us today, Chris. Thanks. Thanks a ton. Next, we have Jason Fink. Jason is with Belfour Property Restoration. He has been in the construction and restoration industry for over 17 years and is going to talk to us a little bit about the contractor's role. And we got some great questions and some information coming from Jason too. All right, those two heads that you see in a picture together, everybody's like, social distancing, what's going on? That's Angela and Mike. Angela Woodard and Mike Rock with CoKen and Chadwell Supply. And Angela is the regional sales manager for CoKen Laboratories, and Mike's the director of sales for CoKen. And they're going to talk to you a little bit more just coming up next about kind of what their role is. And they are our chemical experts today, which is very important. And one of the things we really need you to be able to take away from today is understanding the big difference. So the lovely lady in the white shirt, that is Tina Arbogast. Tina's part owner of Greater Quality Pool Service, and they bring over a decade of experience in multifamily industry, provide pool service and repairs to the Tampa Bay area. And we're very lucky to have Tina. She helps us out with a lot of different stuff, and also was on a call that we did most recently with our property managers, helping them with some of them were getting ready to reopen their pools. So I'm Russ Webb from the Bay Area Apartment Association. If you don't know me, I'm the executive director and super happy to be here. And like I mentioned, the director of programs from the Bay Area Apartment Association, Crystal Firm, and the VP of the Apartment Association of Greater Orlando, Desiree Starr, will be entertaining you in the chat and also looking at those questions. So best way you can interact with us today is to use the chat and also to use those Q&A features. And that's that. All right, so let's get started. Mike and Angela, let's talk a little bit about Chadwell, CoKen, and then we'll jump into the stuff you got.
So, as most of you know, Chadwell Supply, they supply multifamily maintenance since 2007, before they were called Chad Supply. Their headquarters are in Tampa, but they service many other areas. I know there's hubs in Nashville, Atlanta, and obviously Florida's well covered. So a lot of times when I have those customers that need MRO supplies outside of our Southeast United States territory that I don't have distributors that can handle it, Chadwell Supply can handle it for us. So that's a little bit about Chadwell Supply.
As you guys, we talked about earlier, this is Mike. My name is Angela. We both work for CoKen Laboratories, and we're a large manufacturer that's been in business since 1962 here in Tampa. And we partnered back years ago with Chadwell Supply in making all of their labeled chemicals, all their cleaning chemicals that they have, we private label for them. We've been dealing with them now since it was 1972, if memory serves me right. Yeah, I know. I can't. The picture's in the way for me to remember. I apologize.
All right. So the big question today, and the two of you are chemical folks, we see all this information coming out from the CDC, from the World Health Organization, the Florida Department of Health, and other about disinfecting. We clean our properties all the time. Our communities are constantly being cleaned. But there's a big difference between cleaning and sanitizing and disinfecting. And let's jump into that first.
Well, Russ, that's the million-dollar question. What is clean, what is sanitizing, and what is disinfecting? Without getting into too much yet, I can summarize it really easy for everybody so everybody has a clear understanding of the difference. Basically, if we were to look at it like this, the pragmatic reality of it is cleaning removes 0% or very little percent or kills bacteria. So cleaning does not kill any bacteria. Sanitizing cleans some bacteria, usually more than 50% of bacteria. And disinfecting kills most of bacteria, or 99.9. So again, you can summarize as cleaning doesn't clean none, doesn't kill any bacteria. To be more specific, sanitizing kills some bacteria, disinfecting kills the most bacteria. So we can dive into that a little bit longer and a little bit more. So cleaning, when you clean something, what you're trying to do is you're trying to remove organic material, typically some type of protein from a surface. Pretty basic comment there. But what people got to realize is before you can disinfect an area or sanitize an area, you have to remove 95% of the organic materials off of the surface. So that way you need to clean the surface if the surface has more than 95% of debris on it. Second thing you'd have to think about, am I in a position where I'm going to sanitize, or am I in a position where I'm going to disinfect? Typically, when we say sanitize, we're talking about applying things to our skin, such as hand sanitizers, which are run by the FDA, or we're talking about sanitizing something in a food service scenario, such as sanitizing dishes in a dishwasher, sanitizing dishes in a 3-bay sink with quaternary ammonium compounds. That's typically when we would sanitize something. And then if we were going to decide that we're not in that scenario, we need to disinfect something, such as in a healthcare scenario, or maybe even a hospitality situation, that's when you would decide that you were going to use a disinfectant where you want to kill 99.9% of the germs.
Okay. So we clean, we sanitize, we disinfect. So let's talk about this question right here that's on the slide. I mean, this is so important because especially right now with what's going on and all we see in the news is that, how many times have we been told to wash our hands now a day? 5 million a day. So how often, though, do we need to be cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting? What's a routine?
Of course, the second million-dollar question, possibly, I hate to be cryptic, but the reality is that it depends on what scenario you're in. For example, if you're in a healthcare scenario, you're going to be cleaning and disinfecting in between every debris situation, every patient, so to speak. Every time a patient sits on your table, you're going to have to run in that situation. In a residential scenario, you're probably not going to disinfect as often. So to break it down, basically, residential scenarios, cleaning once a week is a very good habit, a very good thing to get into, and obviously using some type of quaternary ammonium-based disinfectant, which is neutral in pH, and we'll get into that in a minute, to disinfect or sanitize, depending on what your ultimate goal is. In a municipality such as MRO situations where you have multifamily living, your need for cleaning and disinfectant is going to be more often in those common areas. Our recommendation for disinfecting in common areas is either using electrostatic sprayer or a fogger at least once a week. And we can get more of that. And I know people have questions about that. That's just a recommendation. And obviously, if you are in a like a scenario like an office, our office, we use the biostatic sprayer every night just because we're very aware of how long the quaternary ammonium compounds can stay on the surfaces. So to answer your question, Russ, it is a very broad question. But yes, depending on your scenario will depend on how often you clean, sanitize, and disinfect and which one you choose to do also.
One of the things on your slide is really interesting. It's talking about how after an area has been compromised. How would you define an area being compromised?
An area that's been compromised is basically has been touched by somebody that is compromised themselves. So in healthcare situations is usually when you hear that verbiage, Russ. If an area has been compromised, at least the COVID-19, for an example, if they had a COVID-19 patient come into the room, they completely are going to go through all the procedures to, I call it wash, rinse, sanitize, or clean and sanitize, disinfect the areas to eliminate any possibility of cross-contamination with an infectious person. So that could be a scenario. Another scenario could be maybe in a nursing home when they change the diapers or change the bedding. That is going to dictate. It's never going to be a routine. It's going to be when the patient needs it to be changed.
Okay, so the chemicals, so many chemicals, and I know that there's so many questions from folks about what do I use where and what's safe for this and what's a porous surface versus a non-porous surface and all that. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, and actually, it might be when we get in the pH slide, it's going to be even a better scenario to get everyone get a visual understanding of what we're going to talk about the pH and what chemicals to use when. But however, this slide right here is basically the lineup of Chadwell chemicals, private label Chadwell chemicals. So these are proprietary to Chadwell. You can't get these anywhere else, and we manufacture them specifically for Chadwell. So this lineup would be on the top line there. You have like your acid cleaners, and we're going to get in this in a little bit more in a minute, but acids remove minerals. So usually you'll see those type of situations in bathroom cleaners or our friend down here with the pools. I'm sure they can get into that a little bit. But yes, the top line with the white containers would be Chadwell's lineup of acid cleaners, and it goes everything from a bath scenario to a very heavy 30% phosphoric acid for MRO scenarios. Somewhere in the middle, we see some degreasers, some extraction shampoos, glass cleaners, and deodorizers. And they also have products like enzyme cleaners, which are natural bacteria that can be removed as used as drain cleaners, as even in dumpsters to remove odors. So enzymes are a very, very great way, neutral, safe way to clean also. So all those products are available through Chadwell. And if anybody has any questions about any of those products, please feel free to reach out to us, and obviously we can steer you in the right direction.
All right, that's if you look at it, it's like you said, you've got acids, neutrals, alkalines. It is super confusing, I know, for a lot of people trying to understand what goes where. So can we talk a little bit about pH scale and how that comes into play?
Love to. My favorite thing to do, Russ. Here's the basic chemistry.
Identify your stage.
Yeah. Identify
what you're cleaning.
So here's a basic chemistry lesson for everybody, and I'm sure some of us already know this, but we have a pH scale. It actually goes from 0 to 14. We cut one number off there. I think maybe that's on off the slide or what, but as you can see on the top here, it says pH scale and cleaning, and a pH scale dictates pH. pH can either be acidic, neutral, or alkaline. If something is acidic, we are going to call a pH from about 0 to right around 4-ish or 5-ish, as you can see the color change. A neutral pH would be from around 5 to 8, possibly 8.5, depending on what you're dealing with. An alkaline pH would be from 9 to 13, 8 to 13, somewhere in there is some gray area. So acidic and alkaline products are corrosive. What that means is, as everybody knows, acids are, they sound dangerous. They're going to burn your skin. True, they definitely will if you're not careful. But so will alkalines on the high side of the pH scale. And that's a common misunderstanding that they think only the acids are dangerous. Alkalines are just as corrosive and just as dangerous as acids. So then in the middle, we have neutral cleaners, which are neutral pH. Our skin is about 5.5% pH or a little acidic, but we basically react well to neutral things. When we touch acidic things, they burn. When we touch alkaline things, they sting our hands. So we're in the neutral to a little bit acidic, our skin is. So when we talk about cleaning, when we want to remove mineral deposits, we want to use an acid. What's a mineral deposit? Well, it could be, lime scale from calcium in the water. It could be rust, magnesium. Common, we see these in bathrooms. Sometimes you'll see them on windows in South Beach, Miami, because the water's very hard, and you'll see these around faucets. That's typically when you want to use a acid cleaner. Neutral cleaners are neutral pH. Those are your enzyme cleaners and your all-purpose cleaners. If you can, you can use a neutral product on any surface without harming it because it's a neutral pH. It's not corrosive. So typically when we're looking for disinfectants and we're trying to find all-purpose cleaners, it's going to fall in this category of being a neutral pH. And then, of course, we have the alkaline cleaners. These are for removing heavy organic soils. Organic soils, anything made from an animal, including us, that includes everything from fats and proteins. A lot of times you see this in food service. You'll see lots of greases, oils, butters. All that is basically animal fats broken down. You'll need a very heavy degreaser that's high in alkaline to emulsify the proteins. So when you're deciding what chemical to use in what scenario, the one thing I want you to think about is what surface am I cleaning and what am I looking at? Is this an acid or is this a mineral or is this, an organic protein and is this a heavy soil? So you want to really think about what you're looking at. And then obviously down to the bottom of this, it has a chart from 0 to 13. These are some examples of Chadwell products that fall in these pH scales real quick. Like Kling is an acid. It's about a 1. It's 30% phosphoric acid. It's a really heavy duty cleaner. It's thick. It's a great bowl cleaner. It's acidic. You wouldn't want to use that on a porous surface. In the middle is neutral. Biozyme is an enzyme-based cleaner. Lavendura is a surfactant, neutral-based cleaner. And Sky Blue is their glass cleaner, which is a little alkaline, but still considered neutral. You can use those products on any surface with no harm. And then, of course, on the right-hand side are some heavy degreasers and some heavy alkaline carpet cleaners. So when you're choosing what products to use, think about pH and think about what surface you're using them.
Just a quick question about, the different products, and you were talking about what surfaces, like which products specifically would you recommend for something we would consider super high touch? Like, for example, doorknobs, light switches.
Right. So when you're talking, if you're in disinfectants, and we do have acid disinfectants and alkaline disinfectants for certain scenarios, but anytime you're talking disinfectants, you really want to go for a neutral pH disinfectant because you're going to be using those high traffic areas and it's going to hit a painted surface and a wall socket. You don't want to use anything corrosive. It'll burn out the plastic on it, and it'll mess up the paint on the wall. It'll screw up the finish on the wooden door. So you want to use a neutral disinfectant or cleaner whenever you're touching those high touch, when you're cleaning or disinfecting those high touch areas.
Okay, the last thing we want to do is cause more damage as we're trying to clean and disinfect for sure.
You got it, Russ.
Absolutely. All right. So this is fascinating to me because it says specifically listed for EPA listed for human coronavirus. Can we talk a little bit about this product?
Yes, this is our neutral disinfectants. Obviously, it has a lot of claims on it. EPA registered cleaner disinfectant. So this is our go-to disinfectant for human coronavirus. This product is ideal for any scenario, and that's why it makes it such a great situational use for you. If you're in a residential scenario, it's great. You could spray it on your countertops. It's neutral pH. It's got a great fragrance. It does have an EPA claim to kill the human coronavirus and about 80 other disinfectant claims on it, which I can get into in a second. And it is great for a healthcare scenario also because it has the TB claims, the human coronavirus claims, the HIV claims, the SARS claims. It has all these what I call broad spectrum kill claims. And these are EPA registered. So note that anytime a pesticide or a disinfectant or you have a kill claim or a duration claim on a label, it has to be EPA registered. Not sanitizer at this time and point, hand sanitizer, but disinfectants. So EPA goes through this and they make sure your label's 100% correct. So if you pull up an EPA registered product, everything on that label's 100% true. Follow the label to the T. It's going to kill everything it says. Just make sure you follow the directions.
Where would I not? Well, I'm sorry, I make the jump. So where would I not want to use this product?
Anywhere. So those doorknobs that they were talking about spraying, this product would be perfect for that.
Right. So the
only place
you don't want to use this product is anywhere that's going to be harmed by water. That's our general rule. So you can use this product anywhere you want, as long as you don't use it on a surface that can be harmed by water. If you use it on a surface that can be harmed by water, this product will harm it.
We got a question in from someone that's asking, is this a product that needs to sit on a surface to be able to work, or does it kill on contact?
Yes, all EPA registered products, all sanitizers, disinfectants have kill claims and kill durations. So in order to meet those durations, they all have what we call dwell times or contact times. That means the surface must be wet for that time. The kill contact time on this particular product is 10 minutes. There are products with smaller kill times out there. However, the amount of kill claims on there aren't as broad. A lot of these won't be the multistat, the sanitizer, the virucide, or the deodorizer either. It'll just be a sanitizer or disinfectant. So that's why our kill claims are a little longer, or a lot of people are 10 minutes, but it has that broad spectrum kill claim and has all those multi-purpose uses for that 10-minute kill claim. On the back of the label, there are a couple sanitizing claims too for this product, 3-minute kill claims for sanitizing also.
We had another question come in. Are all products required to give a shelf life, a time that they can still be viable for use?
You know, that's one thing that the EPA does not make us put on the label or anything like that. But I can tell you, if your warehouse is ISO certified, then yes, their third party comes out and checks your manufacturing labels. No quats are allowed to be on the floor for more than 12 months.
Okay, so the product that we just looked at is, and Herb, we said where we should and should not use it. Which product would you recommend people use on furniture?
So that product is EPA registered for non-porous surfaces. So the EPA is saying, well, this, we're not going to say it's going to kill germs on non-porous surfaces like all disinfectants. However, it's neutral pH. So there are disinfecting and sanitizing claims on there saying you can spray it in your shoes, which are non-porous surfaces. So totally safe to spray on non-porous surfaces. And if you read the label very carefully, there are kill claims for non-porous, sanitizing claims for non-porous surfaces.
Okay, awesome. So we've been hearing a lot and reading a lot about the use, and I think you even said it earlier, about the disinfecting foggers and misters. Can you explain to us how they work?
Well, I think Jason would probably be the expert on the mechanics of that if I'm correct, right? But what I can tell you is basically how I define it is a fogger would be when you want to use a neutral pH product in these fogging electrostatic machines for sure. A fogger, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, I think you're probably the expert on this more than me, but the fogger would be to sanitize or disinfect a large area all at once. An electrostatic sprayer kind of targets what you're trying to sanitize.
So Jason, so what's the use case scenario for the fogger?
So we really, on most of our cases, we stick with electrostatic sprayer. We go in because it was a little bit what I was going to touch on, but the main difference on that one is it's going to stick to hard surfaces for a longer period of time. Okay. It's also going to get to the hard to reach crevices that normally wouldn't reach. So that's one of the huge pluses and advantages of electrostatic spray.
Got it. We'll talk about that again when we get to you in just a minute. There's a slide up here now that shows you this thing, and it'll also be sent out in the survey with all the other information that we're going to be having. So let's move on. So some of us have already opened our pools, but Tina, let's talk a little bit about, for folks who've not opened yet, and I know there's several, and I live in an apartment community in Clearwater. My pool is open, but the community right next door is not. So let's talk about, as people are getting ready to open their pools, first question, what's the number one mistake that people are going to make or reopening a pool after it's been closed for a period of time?
The number one mistake that we typically see is people not preparing the appropriate levels of sanitation for the sudden increase in usage, primarily not cleaning the filters frequently enough. So during slow season or slow time of the year, our winter time in Florida, and also, of course, with the pools being closed, the filters haven't really been needing as much cleaning as they normally would. But of course, with the sudden increase in usage, it is very important to ensure that those filters are operational and getting cleaned frequently.
Okay, so this is kind of a sidebar question because it really doesn't have a lot to do with reopening your pool, but we did get a couple of questions after we did our last town hall about the storage of pool chemicals. how that should be handled. Can you address that?
So your pool service provider will be bringing out chemicals as they need per visit. However, but it may be kind of prudent to keep a couple chemicals on site just in case they're needed on a day that service isn't coming. So for example, that might be a jug of bleach or a couple bags of powdered chalk. As far as storing those, you would follow your appropriate hazmat or state guidelines regarding storing those kind of chemicals. Maintenance staff should be mostly aware of the appropriate labeled storage containers, but double check with your local municipalities just to be sure.
All right. So you talked about your guidelines, and I think that's a great thing to point out. So why don't you go over what you were talking about on your slide here about the Florida Department of Health, and then we'll talk a little bit about municipalities.
So the Florida Department of Health did not give us any differing instructions regarding regular pool service. They did substantiate that regular pool service is adequate for the sterilization of your pools. But we did see quite a few properties reduce regular pool service during this time. So it's important that if you're planning to reopen your pool, that you resume full regular pool service as soon as possible.
And we also said, Tina, and you know, could you keep up with it, but several municipalities have different rules than what the state has.
Yes. The governor left that kind of detail up to the municipalities. So what's happening here in Tampa Bay is even differing within Pinellas and Hillsborough. It can be dramatically different depending on the other coast of Florida. So please double check with your municipalities.
Definitely your local Department of Health, and big plug for the apartment associations. Check our websites. We got lots of good information up there on both BAA and AAGO. Let's talk a little bit about the testing your chemicals daily. That's up there on your slide. Talk a little bit about that, and what does that mean to test your chemicals daily, and what should they be looking for?
So your regular pool service provider will be testing on each of their service days. On average, your pool service provider is coming out 3 days a week, and they'll be testing and they'll be logging that in the maintenance log. However, Florida Department of Health does require that the pool chemicals be tested daily. So that means that on the non-service days, the on-site maintenance team needs to be testing those chemicals and logging them to ensure that they are within Florida Health Department range. Now, it is prudent to be sure that the test kit that is on site for your team is up to date. Expired reagents in those kits will not provide accurate readings. So if you need new reagents for those test kits, or you just need test kit in general for your on-site team, you can reach out to your pool service provider to get you one, or your local maintenance supply company.
All right. So if you're talking about, you said reach out to your pool service provider. So I know at least of one community manager that I've spoken to in the past couple of weeks, and they're looking right now for a new provider. What questions should they be asking, especially in light of everything that's going on with the cleaning and all of that? What questions should they be asking if they're looking for someone?
So if they are, a good question to ask, well, first you want to double check with your maintenance staff and see if, hey, is there anything malfunctioning in the pool equipment as of now? That way, when they do go and approach a potential pool service provider or their current pool service provider, they can go ahead and ask, hey, what is it going to cost us? What can we budget for to repair these items? An additional question that one can ask is, if there is something that if nothing is in need of a dire repair at the moment, what can they budget for in the upcoming year? Sometimes filter grids need to be replaced. Motors often need to be replaced within a year or two. So that's something to ask your pool service provider or a potential one, what they can budget for in the upcoming year. An additional question that they can ask is that if they do not have an automated chemical feeder system currently on site, they can ask how much it would be to install one. That will dramatically increase the safety for your residents swimming in the pool, as it automatically disperses those chemicals. And that will typically run in between the $2,500 to $3,000 range, assuming there's no chemical feeder equipment on site at all.
Okay. Well, it's budget season right now, so that's very timely. For sure. Chris is nodding his head. Chris, like, it is big time budget season. Jason, we're coming back to you now. So one of the things that, I noticed about you, Jason, about Belfour that kind of caught my mind, because we all know that when the coronavirus thing first started, the first story we saw in a big way was the Diamond Princess in Japan. We saw that, and I know the Belfour was asked to go in and clean the Diamond Princess. And so want to get back to talking a little bit about your process and the process for a contractor in general when you're being called in. So how do you evaluate? How do you start with that?
So there's three typical types of cleaning. You have the preventative, which is typically your, lack of a better word, janitorial type services. From there we have obviously your suspected and then your confirmed. So anything suspected, confirmed, we have symptoms, et cetera, we are approaching it as if it is there. So with that being said, we bring a hygienist on in a lot of those situations, in every situation that does have a confirmed case, to keep an eye on us, make sure that we're, applying everything and executing in the field as we should be. In those situations we tackled that one and sent a large crew overseas and it's, we have it relatively easier than everyone else. We don't have to think hard about it. We just apply it in the field and make sure that our thought process is being executed on that site. So heavy contact areas, as Mike was mentioning, we are going to approach those door handles, light switches. We're going to use, we usually do our electrostatic spray. Believe it or not, we do it as we enter. So we typically hit it from the get-go. We do our wipe down. Mind you, our guys are in full PPE. And then we hit it again before we leave. And we recommend once a week we come in and do those services. We've been handling a lot of early childhood centers, for example, gyms and apartment complexes, things like that. So we've had some customers do biweekly, but we push for about once a week. But Diamond itself, quite a project. It was interesting to be a part of, and it was cool to see that completed and get done in an efficient manner. So
what are the training protocols that you've put into place for your people when it comes to COVID cleaning? Because it's a big thing, and for a lot of people, it's a really scary topic.
So every one of our technicians, they get fit tested. You get a fit test once a year. You go through, do the make sure you get your physical, make sure everything's good to go so you can enter that facility. We are in over 43 states and we have global coverage. So we're fortunate to the fact that, we're not franchised. Everything is run out of our Birmingham, Michigan office. So we have a large support system and a great classroom training setting. So when this first, came upon us in February, we had to do some research on our end. We had to, just like everyone else, it was new to us and we had to learn how to do it. So all our guys, once we got our arms around, how to approach this, we sent them all down for training on a national level from Seattle to Tampa. And we went through each protocol, our standard operating procedures, how we're going to approach these. And again, we take, Mike and Angela's information and we apply it in the field.
So someone's looking, you talk about PPE, right? So we've got somebody out there listening right now that's looking to bring in a contractor to do some stuff. What PPE questions should they be asking their contractor about what types of PPE that they're using?
I think it's mostly for anything protection for the customer as well too, right? So we see full face respirators. We have full Tyvek, everything named. So for us on our end, it's just making sure that you're, not just a respirator. You want to have the full gloves, the Tyvek, full suit, basically astronaut style going in.
And what do you tell your techs as they're going into work in an occupied building? They're going into work in a unit that's in a building that's fully occupied. Besides that, what protocols should our people be looking for their contractors to take if they're working in an occupied building? So
typically the protocols we would take is I think the main thing we've got to decipher is will somebody be in the unit, occupying the unit or not. We need at least about an hour of non-occupancy, have the spot vacant before anyone else gets back in. Mainly it's how much you can take of the fumes. So the fumes from the spray can sometimes be a little much. We've gone from 3 hours though down to about an hour, depending on, again, the individual. So, but as far as our approach on that, we typically we go in and we got 3 to 5 guys at a time. For example, we do another early childhood center this Saturday, 15,000 square foot facility, and we're going to do a general wipe down and spray the entire area. Takes just about 4.5, 5 hours, and we get in and out. Depending on if someone's going to be in there soon after us, we also can put in some air scrubbers, help alleviate some of the odor and get you back in there quicker.
Have you heard, or do you have any experience personally or heard about people using UV lights in an air handler?
That mostly falls under our HVAC contractors. They are effective. I can tell you the coil sterilization, the stick that's applied is relatively inexpensive. It doesn't hurt. I would say I wouldn't rely on it solely. You typically want to have your air ducts cleaned 3 to 5 times a year. Every 3 to 5 years. But with that being said, you don't want to just rely on that, of course. It's helpful, and it certainly has its benefits. Again, air scrubbers and a lot of our general jobs, we're applying those items to, because we're really only, the Diamond, for example, we had to do the duct system because we had to clean the entire ducts because it's such a closed core space. But in other areas, we have office buildings, things like that, especially if it's preventative. It's usually customer preference if we're doing air ducts or not. And usually, in our opinion, air scrubber could probably be helpful, but we're not trying to make that decision. I'll leave that to Mike and Angela.
So you're saying that UV light's basically a good additional step, but don't rely on
it solely, but it's a good additional.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great. So if someone's bringing a contractor in, what's something they should be looking out for if they're hiring a contractor? What's the number one question you think they should be asking someone if they're going to be bringing them in?
For us, regarding the COVID, it was, the experience factor, and what are you basing your remediation efforts on? And so I would also like to know what's being used. We use Biosyn, which is a product on our end that we've got on a global level that we've been applying, but there's other products out there as well too that work just as well. So our main, to me, that's the main thing is what are your protocols? What's your standard operating procedures? We have an SOP put out for each job that we do that we give our guys. So they know what they're doing. There's no surprises. They can handle each job the same way, depending on the facility.
I like that. I think that documentation would make people that are working with you feel secure. And speaking of making somebody feel secure, the next gentleman we're about to talk to is on the front lines. So Chris Lincoln. So Chris, you run currently the Greystar owned assets. We all know that Greystar. Everybody saw the news this week. Greystar just went to 660,000 units, and it's a monster. And you've got so many different types of assets. You have high rise, mid rise, conventional, low rise, garden communities, everything. So let's talk just for a minute about where you are with your assets on reopening amenities and offices.
So like you and Tina mentioned on earlier, it varies jurisdiction to jurisdiction. You've got different cities, different counties, different states setting their own guidelines. So we have to be very, very careful with our operations teams to make sure we're scrubbing through those governor directives and the mayor's directives and making sure that the property is adhering to those properly. You look at a region like Georgia where they've initially just issued a blanket statement that the state's reopened, and then the governor recanted and kind of phased things in. It can be a little confusing at times. So it's really a matter of understanding what your local requirements are and adhering to those and making sure that your residents and your public traffic is aware of what's going on and what you're doing.
Did this change with COVID, or how? No, it changed. How much did it change the way you're training your teams?
It's been quite an experience because you look at how our industry has been pushing for more and more training, particularly on the maintenance side, and everything that we've looked at from facilitators and whatnot, and the different experiences we've had as far as interactive in-person learning sessions, and then all of a sudden not even being able to get 10 people in a room together and having to go to these remote sessions and remote learning and webinars and Skype calls and Zoom calls. It's been an experience to be sure. So as you're talking about the training and the way that the things have to be handled differently, we know, and we've all kind of heard that, for most of our members in both, Bay Area and AAGO, that most of them went to emergency maintenance request only for a while. But now that things are
opening back up slowly in most jurisdictions. What PPE are you putting in place for your techs as they go and do service requests?
So through the whole pandemic, we've been pretty lucky that we've been able to maintain a pretty steady supply of the latex nitrile type rubber protective gloves. We have leveraged some investment partnerships that we've got who may have hands in other medical facilities and whatnot, and be able to get a hold of just some generic face coverings for our team members. We partnered with our marketing supplier and was able to get some branded cloth face coverings for a lot of our team members. The biggest shortage we've had, and I think most people have experienced this, is with disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizers. It's just been extremely difficult to get a hold of those kinds of materials. So a lot of our regions have partnered with local distilleries. They've partnered with local medical suppliers. I'm sure our friends at CoKen can relate that there's a lot of small family organized chemical suppliers and chemical manufacturers out there who are interested in leveraging some unique partnerships.
So showings, as we know, most communities went to totally virtual showings of units. But now they're starting to open up, and they're starting to do either, whether it be self-touring or some traditional type showings again. How are you having your teams handle disinfecting of the apartment homes after a showing?
So typically, a lot of our communities are running self-tours by appointment. So it's easy to coordinate with getting in a leasing team member or maintenance team member to disinfect and wipe down the high-touch areas after the viewing. There's typically a pretty thorough cleaning in the morning and then again in the evening. Just to do the best that we can. When you look at what CDC guidelines are for cleaning of commercial facilities, they're relatively vague, and they're not very thorough. So it's a matter of how do we make our prospects, how do we make our customers, how do we make our residents feel safe?
How about the office areas? Because now the offices are going to be reopening again to public. What protocols have you put in place for your teams on cleaning offices?
And again, speaking from the owned assets, we've got a pretty straightforward guideline for our teams there. But the fee managed assets can vary pretty widely depending on what the individual owners are willing to expend and what they feel is necessary to make the residents and the clients feel safe. It can be anything from bringing in a janitorial company every morning, or doing a fogging once a week, or even daily. It's really a balance of customer satisfaction versus expense availability.
Okay. For you personally, what's been the hardest thing through all of this? I'm just curious.
So there's two sides to this. I think number one, the most difficult thing for me personally has been, I cover territories from New York City all the way down to Miami, Florida. So trying to navigate the different regulations, the different government bodies, and understanding what's available has been extremely difficult to me. From a people standpoint, it's a matter of, at no point in our lifetime have we had so much information readily available. You look at the social media platforms, you look at the bloggers, the podcasts, you look at all the different things that are available on the internet that are just significantly unverified. So it's been extremely difficult for me to help my team members sort through the noise and understand what applies to them, what's true, what's rumor, and what they can best do to protect themselves and protect their residents.
And how early on did you put out guidelines to your teams or a COVID infected unit, if you will? How early on did y'all do that?
So it's something that our corporate team, our legal team, our risk management team have been looking at since the early days in February. We established an internal coronavirus task force to just kind of stay on top of the latest news and filter through things. We created a coronavirus section of our team member portal, our intranet. And it's just been an ongoing and evolving thing since back in February.
Okay. Mike and Angela, so chemicals, as we learn more about the virus, and it seems to, our information always seems to change. What is your company doing as far as trying to stay ahead of the curve on supplies and different types of chemicals?
Well, we had obviously many forecasting meetings, but we recognized the need back in early December that we were going to have to buy up a lot of the MQuats and a lot of the isopropyl alcohol, and we did. So we are being able to provide disinfectants at an astonishing rate. Our brand is actually national now, so we aren't having any problems getting the disinfectants out. We abandoned our hand sanitizer schematic or our plan, if that's what you want to do, just because we really wanted to focus on EPA registered products that are going to attack the human coronavirus. So we planned really well. We forecasted well. There are some situations where we have to divvy out certain products to certain amounts to certain customers to make it fair for everybody, so everybody has a piece of the pie, so everybody can protect their customers. But we forecasted it correctly, and actually we're in very good shape right now as far as raw materials.
That's great. Tina, are you seeing any problem with availability of pool chemicals, or are they still plentiful when you're out there trying to help your clients?
No, we haven't had an issue, thankfully, with adequate pool chemical supply. Our suppliers tried to get ahead of things as quickly as possible, and thankfully that stayed in steady supply for us. So no, there wasn't an issue with obtaining pool cleaning sanitation supplies in the slightest, thankfully.
And Jason, on availability issues and supplies, are you having trouble getting the thing that you need on, especially when you're going in to clean a COVID-related unit? Are you having trouble with either chemicals or a PPE, either one?
Originally, PPE was tough out of the gate. We're fortunate because we're such a large organization, across the country. We have access to a lot of different resources. So as far as supply solutions, things like that, we've been okay for the most part, although it was a struggle out of the gate early, mid-March, late March, when this, first came upon us.
Chris, if you were going to give advice to a maintenance director out there on, because there's a lot of our municipalities that are just getting ready to open up their amenities, what's the number one piece of advice you would give to them as they are looking at opening up amenities for the first time?
Educate yourself, get involved with the CDC website, speak to your restoration vendors, your disinfection vendors, things like that, and understand the process yourself from the experts.
That's awesome. We're speaking of experts. We're very lucky to have all of you with us today. And thank you all. And and Mike knows more about chemicals than I think I'll ever know. And if I studied from now till the end of time, but it's really interesting. And we've got lots of great questions coming in about it. So what we're going to do is in the survey that goes out afterwards, we'll be providing the contact information for all of our panelists, as well as they've all provided some resources as well. And we'll definitely, put those in there too. But thank you again to Chadwell for sponsoring today. If you are a Chadwell customer, tell them thank you. And if you're not a Chadwell customer, tell them thank you for sponsoring our webinar. Cleaning versus disinfecting versus sanitizing. There's a lot of information there. And hopefully everybody's gotten some good nuggets today. So appreciate you all. And hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your Thursday.